Well, after the shock decision by Nicola Sturgeon to resign yesterday, attention, as it always does in politics, now moves to the future about who is going to take over the leadership next, and indeed what the SNP do about that big constitutional question of trying to get a second referendum on independence. We know, in part, some of those questions will be answered a little later on today, we think, when the National Executive meet to decide on the timetable for the new election. There had been an expectation the SNP were going to hold a massive conference next month on whether they were going to potentially use the Westminster election next year as a de facto second referendum. There are many in the SNP who think that's a bad strategy, and many now calling on that meeting next month to be postponed, so there is enough time to get a new leader elected. In terms of who's going to take over, well, there are lots and lots of names floating around, lots of suggestions, lots of rumours. Kate Forbes, for example, who's the current Treasury Secretary, well, she's been mooted as a rising star. She is socially conservative. She is someone who is pretty young. She's in her early 30s, but is seen as potential leadership material. The question is her time now? Then you've got Angus Robertson. You may remember him. He was the SNP leader at Westminster for a period of time. Again, someone who seemed to have quite a lot of experience in going in his favour, but has had problems in the past. And then you've got someone like John Sweeney, who's the current Deputy First Minister, been involved in Scottish politics for decades, was the SNP leader at one stage around 2 decades ago, but ultimately has never held the top job as First Minister, and many people feel, is he up to it or not? Again, it will be up to SNP members to decide who does take over. And then you've got this big question about what they do when it comes to that second referendum question. We know one of the reasons Nicola Sturgeon decided to leave the stage yesterday, if you like, is because the SNP are slightly boxed in on a strategy on the way forward. We know the UK Supreme Court have slapped them down. We know that the UK Parliament is not willing to grant a second referendum. So what strategy, what ploy do the SNP use next? Alex Salmond has suggested this morning that this should be used as a reset for Scottish nationalism to try and work out what the plan should be going forward. And all this also with a whole range of different problems in the in tray of an incoming First Minister, not least a struggling healthcare system, educational attainment levels that aren't terribly good in Scotland. Big questions about that Gender Recognition Act and what they do in dealing with the UK government, and of course a cost of living crisis that is affecting the rest of the UK. One person, though, who is pleased to see the back of Nicola Sturgeon is Donald Trump. He, the former US president, remember him, he said that it is wonderful that the people of Scotland are much better off after her resignation. Good riddance, he says, to the failed woke extremist Nicola Sturgeon of Scotland. So fair to say that while most politicians in Britain, despite the political differences, have said that they will miss Nicola Sturgeon, Donald Trump is not one of them.